Earlier this year, the House Judiciary Committee approved a bill called H.R. 40. If passed, it would establish a commission to study giving reparations to Black people to compensate for the institution of slavery. But what are reparations exactly, and what should they make up for? Let's find out in a segment called How Did We Get Here? When many Americans hear the word reparations, they think of it as a monetary compensation for the emotional impact of slavery, kind of like a check with "I'm sorry" written in the memo. But that's not what reparations are, because there is no amount of money you could pay that would make up for enslaving people. The actual purpose of reparations is to restore the physical and financial things that were stolen from Black Americans as a result of slavery. There are lots of examples of this, but let's just explore one: housing. And to do that, let's go back to the year 1865. That's when bicycles looked like this, and Paul Rudd looked like this. Right before the Civil War ended, President Lincoln's top general met with a group of Black ministers to ask how the government could help the formerly enslaved be successful in America. They said, "Give us some land we can live on." And the general said, "No problem. We have a bunch we just stole from Native Americans." The general issued Special Field Order Number 15, which confiscated Confederate land and gave it back to Black people. The government promised every formerly enslaved Black family 40 acres and a mule, which is very practical. Personally, I would have asked for 40 acres and a hippopotamus just to mess with them. Unfortunately, what the government didn't promise was no take-backsies. Because after Lincoln's assassination, President Andrew Johnson rescinded the order and left those Black families without a place to live. Because just like a dental patient swearing they're gonna start flossing, the U.S. loves to go back on a promise. Now, let's skip ahead to the 1930s and 40s. That's when cars looked like this and Paul Rudd looked like this. At that time, Black Americans were being terrorized in the South, so millions of them migrated north. But many Northerners refused to rent or sell homes to them. So Black families did what they've done for generations. They made something out of nothing. They created makeshift communities and alleyways in cities like Washington, D.C., and then Congress came along and created something called the Alleyway Dwelling Authority. They cited the 8th article of the Constitution, which is, if things are going okay for Black people, it's time to it up. The Alleyway Dwelling Authority said, "We love what you've done with the place, but we want to make it safe for you. Why don't you move out and let us fix it up for you?" But when they did, they put those houses up for sale at prices so high, Black families couldn't afford to move back. So they were left, once again, without a place to live. Now, usually when something that bad happens to Black people, it's because somebody said the word Candyman 5 times. Hold on, did that count as one of my times? I take it back. Now, the history of kicking Black people out of their homes isn't limited to big cities. Let's look at a town in Maryland called Frostburg. In 1866, 2 Black women purchased land there that no one else wanted, and with it they created Brownsville, a community of freed Black people. They built a school and a flourishing community of businesses and homes owned by Black people. I think you know where this is going. The local white people saw what could be done on that land, and they decided they wanted a school too. And you guessed it, they built it right on top of Brownsville. They spent the next couple of decades pushing Black residents out of their homes so that they could build a college. In fact, members of the community were forced to sell their houses for $10. $10 for a house is insane. Even Monopoly houses cost $50. The only house that should cost $10 is this one. And even then, you're underpaying. It's adorable. So what used to be Brownsville is now Frostburg State University, whose mascot is, I'm guessing, the sneaky land thieves. And the university left the residents of Brownsville and their descendants without a place to live. Which brings us back to reparations. Reparations aren't just about putting a monetary value on the harm of enslavement. They're about restoring to Black Americans the tangible things that were stolen from them through Jim Crow laws, housing discrimination, and so many other living, breathing legacies to enslavement. And there is no limit to what these reparations can look like. Maybe it's direct payments. Maybe it's housing subsidies. Maybe it's buying 17 copies of the book I wrote with my sister Lacey. I'm just spitballing here. But whatever we do, it's time to do something. That bill I mentioned earlier, H.R. 40, it was written in 1989 and has been introduced in every session of Congress since, which means it's 32 years old. That's right, they've been trying to pass this bill for an entire Daniel Kaluuya. Let's pass it already so our country can become something better than it has been for the past 400 years, because if we don't, well then America, much like this guy's face, might just stay exactly like this forever. This has been How Did We Get Here?